Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Friends of Flight 93 20th Commemoration Speaker Series. I'm Donna Gibson, Friends Board President and Volunteer Ambassador at Flight 93 National Memorial, and I'll be your host for today's program. The Friends of Flight 93 was organized as the official nonprofit partner to the National Park Service. We support the mission of keeping the stories of the 40 passenger and crew members of United 93 alive for generations to come. In April of 2006, the blockbuster movie United 93 opened nationwide with a total first weekend gross of over $11 million. Over the last few months, NBC Universal's Studios worked in collaboration with AMC Theaters for a re-release of this box office hit. The proceeds of revenue generated from ticket sales will be donated to the Friends of Flight 93 National Memorial. The Friends are so grateful for this initiative. We also want to acknowledge the work of Brad Mendelson from NBC Universal Studios in helping us get our guests together today. Brad has also been helpful in getting us the promotional materials to use as we were promoting the speaker series. And now I would like to welcome today's guest, Paul Greengrass, the writer, director of United 93. Paul, you want to wave? Gordie Felt, brother to Edward Felt. Kenneth Nacke, brother to Louis Nacke III.
I'll use this hand. How's that?
Good. And Claudette Green, wife of Donald Freeman Green. And also we will have pre-recorded messages from Lori Guadagno and Elsa Grunland Griffin. So today's guest will be speaking about the making of United 93 and the importance of this movie and telling the stories of the 40 passenger and crew members. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us. So I'm going to open today's discussion with a question to Paul. Paul, please explain to our audience what resonated with you about the United 93 story that compelled you to write and direct United 93.
Well, I think that like everyone, but particularly, 9/11 changed all our lives. Obviously yours all directly, but everybody's lives. The world shifted on its axis in that moment. And I remember very, very clearly, I was making a film actually about the troubles in Northern Ireland. I was just finishing it. On the day of 9/11, and I was driving into the cutting room, and you could feel that suddenly this was going to be a different era for my children, for me, my wife. Everything was going to change, and making sense of that is what you do as a filmmaker, what you do if you're a novelist or a journalist, that you try to find the meaning, distill the meaning, explore it. And I felt that if we could look in detail at the event and try and set aside, any preordained views and try and just explore what it meant. And what it meant was, to me, it meant courage, extraordinary courage. And courage, in the end, is love. That's what courage is. That's in its distilled form. And I haven't seen the film in quite a long time, but I'm going to watch it with my nearly 18-year-old daughter, who, of course, was not alive then, this weekend. And I think that's interesting. I think for many young people now, these events, of course, they know about them, but what do they know? And I hope that's what they see in amongst the tragedy and the pain and the anger and all of those things that are an inevitable part of these events. What stands at the heart of it is courage, and courage is love. And that is where the hope, we in our country, you in yours, are grappling with all these difficult images from Afghanistan. And now's not the time to, pick the bones out of what's right and what's wrong. But in the end, as these events slip back in time, that seems to me to sit more prominently, not less prominently. And that to me is the lesson of that day, of that aeroplane, of those extraordinary people for me.
Those are beautiful words, Paul. Also, I know in reading some of your notes that it was really important for you to make sure that the timing was right for this. So do you want to talk about that a little bit? Because I know that was extremely important to you.
You mean the timing of when to make the film? Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
I've made a number of films about terrorism and whatever you want to call it over the years. And these are general propositions, and you all on this conversation would be able to speak to this better than I. But from my perspective, it seems to me this way. When events like this occur, those directly involved, their lives are irrevocably changed literally out of a clear blue sky, forever. For those of us not directly involved, who watch these events or events like these on the television, of course, and I'm speaking about, that would be me, we're shocked and we feel grief, of course, that such things could happen, and to see the human cost of it and the cost to our countries and to our societies and to our way of life. But here's really what happens. After a certain amount of time, those of us on the outside want normality back at some level. We want the world to carry on, not in a heartless way, but it's inevitable. But those directly involved, I think at that point, are on a journey in search of meaning. How could such events occur? What do they mean? What does this mean? And so the journey that ends outside is only beginning for people. And that's, I think, in that space, which is inevitable in these events, is where a film like United 93, but also the many other pieces of work, whether journalistic or novelistic or poetic or, in all the other mediums that we humans explore our experiences, we have to process these things in this broad way. And I wanted to ask permission from you all to make the film. And I think that you all felt that it was going to be a legitimate way to try and explore one piece of exploration of its meaning. And I think that, it seems to me on the outside, communicates what it feels to be directly affected for those of us outside who are affected but not directly. Somewhere that space that I suspect for you can sometimes feel very lonely can be bridged by these pieces so that people watch and understand a little bit of what these events were and what they may mean today still, I would suggest. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. I know that we've used your film with groups who are coming to the memorial. Many parents will have their children watch the United 93 before coming so that they at least have some background information. And it's an excellent film for that. Going to have Danny switch to the pre-recorded message from Elsa at this point, and Elsa's going to talk about how much meaning this movie had. We have joining us this afternoon Elsa Griffin, and Elsa is the sister to passenger Linda Gronlund. Welcome, Elsa.
Thank you so much. Elsa,
when we talked about putting together the speaker series with Paul, you were going to be traveling on the day of the actual speaker series, but you really wanted to participate. And it was important for you to be able to tell your story of how important this United 93 movie was and how much you appreciated Paul's writing and directing of this movie. So why don't you tell our audience a little bit about that?
Yeah. When I was first contacted by Paul's team, one of his producers, I was wary, like always. I mean, I'd been contacted so many times before for different TV productions and other sort of telling of the story. And to tell you the truth, I was pretty disappointed in most of those others, so I was wary. But as I got to hear more about what Paul had in mind and the fact that he wanted all the family members to basically approve before he went forward, it just said so much about how much he and his team respected our family members and how he wanted to tell the story in as authentic a way as possible. I mean, it's not really, we don't know exactly what happened. We do have some recordings and we do have some, testimony about what happened, and we had the voice recorder as well. But we can't know exactly what happened. But I think that Paul and all the people that he had involved in this movie did their very best to tell the entire story. You know, it wasn't just a story about how 4 big guys stood up and tried to take over the plane. There were lots and lots of courageous people on that plane that day. I've gotten to know many of their family members, and pretty much to a person, they were really special people. And they were powerful people. They were powerful women. And I think part of that story is what a lot of the women on board were doing to participate as well. And that was part of the story that I felt was communicated in the movie exceptionally well. And I really appreciated it.
That's all. Especially since your sister, Linda, was a very strong woman and was very convicted in what she did and what she believed in. So I think that's extremely special. So, Elsa, when you think about how soon the movie came out, did you think it was too soon?
You know, I didn't really think it was too soon. It had been a few years before it was actually released. I think it was a story that needed to be told, and there was real value in telling that story when things were still fresh enough to be able to get as close to the truth as we could.
Okay, well, anything else that you would like our audience to know, Elsa?
I think it's really important that we have movies like United 93 made, because in another couple of decades, there won't be that many of us around who were alive on 9/11. And I think films can live way beyond lifetimes. And so this particular film is really important for people to see what these courageous individuals on this flight did to try to change the course of history, the way it had been almost forced upon them. So I think it's important, and I'm really glad that the movie was made. And I think it was just one little last aside is when I saw the screening for the first time, this is how compelling the movie is. I knew the ending, all too well. And I found myself sort of rooting for them towards the end of the movie. So that's pretty powerful.
I would agree with you. I did watch it myself. And even today, when I was watching some of the releases for the movie being re-released, I felt the same way all over again. So I do think it's a great way for us to remember those 40 heroes and the actions that they took to potentially save a lot of additional lives. So Elsa, thank you so much for joining us. And I know that you're busy trying to get back to the States for the 20th anniversary. So we really, really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to join us this morning so that we can share your story.
Well, thank you very much.
So, Gordie, I talked about the funds from the re-release being donated to the Friends. Can you tell us about the original release of the movie and how that impacted the families of Flight 93?
Absolutely. And I think, I'm not sure that Paul really understands, and Brad at Universal Studios really understand the impact that this film had, not only on our families emotionally, just the brilliant way that Paul, you explored the topic without exploiting the topic, and we will forever be grateful to you for that.
Thank you.
But just the process, the initial release of this movie was overwhelming. I remember Tribeca Film Festival is there, and at the Cannes Film Festival, and just how it was received by the general public. And what many people don't realize is this, the generosity of Universal. They donated a percentage of the gross from the first weekend to the family organization. And without getting into specifics, between the movie and the DVD sales, Universal Studios donated approximately $1.4 million to the families of Flight 93. That money is directly responsible for us being able to sit at a completed memorial today. The family were able to use that money to purchase the land on which the memorial is built. The federal government wasn't able to secure the land as quickly as we were as a private entity, a 501c3 non-for-profit organization. One of our family members, Patrick White, is a land attorney and was up to his eyeballs in land negotiations and doing a brilliant job to help secure the land. So we used that $1.4 million to buy parcels, which then we were able to more quickly sell to the National Park Service. And then we reused the money to buy more parcels, and we were able to churn that money through to secure the lands. And as I said, if it wasn't for the generosity of Universal Studios, we may still be waiting for the federal government to purchase some of this.
Amazing. That's amazing.
So, from our perspective, not only did you create a world-class movie and did it with the ultimate dignity and respect for our loved ones, for our families, but in the process of doing so, you were instrumental in enabling us to work with our partners to create this world-class national movement. So I thank you from the bottom of my heart, Paul.
Well, Gordie, I can't tell you how that makes me feel. It always makes me cry. I mean, look, movie studios don't too often get pats on the back. You know what I mean? They're big commercial organizations, but they've got heart and soul too, and Universal do. And I've worked with them a lot. I've worked at other studios too, and never believed the horror stories about Hollywood. Well, probably do believe some of them, but the truth is, it's a lot of very, very good, smart, committed, compassionate, decent people who do the best they possibly can to tell stories, popular ones that all our kids want to go and see and eat popcorn to, interesting ones maybe that we want to watch, and everything in between. And speaking from experience, and look, I butt heads with studios sometimes in my work. I can't pay them enough tributes as well. I thought they just did the most remarkable job, and their courage with that film, actually, and their willingness to make it and release it in the right way and do all the right things, I think it's just, speaks volumes for them, for sure.
And I think what's really important is a lot of people may have seen that movie come out and thought, well, here goes Hollywood taking advantage of these poor families. And I think it's really important that our audience understands what that movie did for the National Park Service, for the families, for all of us, in being able to create this memorial that we can forever tell the stories of the 40s. So that's amazing.
And somebody not on our call, Kate Solomon, who you all know, who worked so diligently. You know, I remember she went round America many times in a frantic circle to go and see everybody and speak to everybody and ask a mission. It starts with that. If you had all not wanted us to make the film, we would not have made it. And you have to start with that. You have to start with, if you're a filmmaker in these situations, humility in your heart and your ears open to listen. And, you know, exploring the past, even if it was at that time quite recent, now quite a long way away. You can never recover the past precisely in a film or a novel, you know. I recently read an extraordinary book by a French author who was caught up in the Bataclan attacks in Paris. The book called Le Lambeau, The Fragment, and he was very badly injured and went through a lot of medical procedures to try and, you know, make good his injuries, hence the word fragment. But really what the book is about is the fragments of his memory and how, as he looks back, he turns these fragments over, but he can never make a complete picture. And I thought it was a most beautiful and profound book because it is about terrorism, but it's applicable to everything. When you make a film, it's not it. It's not the event itself. It's a portrayal of it. As best is try and present a portrayal of those events that feel truthful, that everybody looking at would think it must have been something a little like that, you know. And that's, I think, what you have to aim for, you know, and hope that as I said at the beginning, that the courage, the collective will, which I think is very strong in that feeling, you feel the way. I mean, I'm always amazed when I look back at the fact that they took a vote. You know, they were the very first people who inhabited our world, the post 9/11 world. While we were we on the outside were processing these events on television, asking ourselves what it was and what was going on, they saw and knew and had to respond and make decisions, as we all did and as our societies did, about how to respond and what were the consequences of responding and what was, you know, all of those things in those short minutes, and take a vote and pass information around and make, I mean, it to me, as an expression of the best of us, it's unparalleled, you know, unparalleled, I think.
So, Ken, you've talked to me a lot about relationships that have been forged through the making of this movie. Do you want to talk to that today?
Yeah, I'd love to.
Yep.
As we're all here today and everybody just wanted to be part of this, which is so exciting.
I think to start it off with, I think Paul and Kate and Universal did a great job in engaging the feelings of the family members. And they were so open that they actually, for me, I was kind of skeptical in the very beginning. It was, to me, I was teetering between, is it too soon to start really telling the story and developing into those emotions? Because each of us are in different stages of grieving. But when I got to talk to Paul and I got to talk to Kate and I got to talk to some of the people at Universal, Brad Mendelson being one of them, they were engaged and intently listening to us and really wanting to honoring our wishes as the families came along. And they gave us as much opportunity to be involved in making of the movie as we wanted or as we could handle. And I thought that was an amazing piece of work on their part. And I'm just going to speak from my aspect. And like he said, he sent Kate over to the United States. She probably looped it several times. I'll bet you every time she came over, I had 2 or 3 conversations with her in person, several conversations through emails, several conversations through phone calls, just trying to gauge my feeling on it and what direction do I, just wanting to know what Kenny Nacke or Kenny Nacke's family, Joey's family wanted in the making of the movie. And they were intently interested in hearing what I had to say. I mean, I had extreme opportunities. They set up where I got to talk to the actor who played my brother. Got to meet him in person to get a feel for it. They asked me to do like a little promo for the movie that was, unbeknownst to me, was going to be shown on movie screens across the country, asking about making the movie that Universal did to me. I had no idea. I'm not doing that. But what I truly respect about the process and the people at Universal and Paul and his team, and I love Kate dearly. You know what I mean? I actually love Kate like she was one of my sisters. I think I talked to her as much as I talked to my kids and my wife during the process of making the movie. I can remember one point in time that really stands out in my mind and the impact. I was actually standing in front of the U.S. Capitol building, getting ready to go in for a ceremony where they were going to present the memorial with that flag that's flown on the International Space Station. So as I'm standing up front, I was there early, so I didn't want to go inside. I was just hanging out front. Next thing, my phone rings. It's actually Corey Johnson, who's the actor that played my brother. He's actually telling me, and Paul, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think when he started filming it, he was sending them into an actual plane fuselage, not a movie set that could expand and close. It was just the narrowness of what the passengers and crew member actually had to deal with on that. And it's interesting that I'm getting a call from the gentleman who's playing my brother saying, we're doing this, we're shooting in this 30-minute block. I did this. What do you think your brother would do in this situation? Should I move in this direction or should I say this? I mean, just the involvement that Paul and his crew gave to me and my family made me feel like I was part of the process of making the movie. And Paul, I can never thank you enough for that much involvement in it because it, like Gordie said, it kind of helped us. It kind of made me realize that life does go on, that a way that we can honor the memories of the 40 heroes of Flight 93, not only my brother or Gordie's brother, but everyone, and how you made it such an inclusive film that it kind of representative how the family organization was at that time, how open and inclusive and loving that we were and respectful. You did that to the families and then some, and you actually portrayed that on your film. I mean, it's truly an honor and a pleasure to be involved in the process because I think I was skeptic and I was, I'm a big hero of what you guys did and a fan.
Right back at you. No, I said right back at you. Thank you so much. And you've no idea how much that means. And I will pass that on to Kate. I spoke to Kate literally 5 minutes before we came on. And I don't know if you know, she's just moved to a farm. She's no longer a city girl. She's gone with her 2 small kids and hence down to, she's bought a farm out in the west of England. So she's going to have a good adventure.
You can just pictures on a regular basis. Yeah.
Isn't that amazing? It's great. It's fantastic.
Well, Kenny, what you said about the selection of the characters yesterday when we were talking to Lori, I was telling her how remarkable the image was of her brother on the screen and how it really looked like him. And she shared a story about, and now joining us remotely with a pre-recorded message is Lori Guadagno. Lori is the sister to Richard, who was one of the passengers on United 93. And when we talked about having the speaker series with Paul, Lori came forth and was really interested in participating. So Lori, you talked to me about how this movie was so cathartic to you and helped in your healing. So do you want to talk about that with our audience today?
Certainly. Well, thank you so much for including me. I really appreciate this because I feel this film was definitely a turning point for me, and it helped in a tremendous way to get over some of the things that I was stuck in. So I absolutely want to endorse what this project meant to me as a family member.
So when you say it helped you get unstuck, can you be a little more specific about that?
Sure. I think prior to this film, the story of Flight 93 was pretty much presented publicly in a way that was about cell phone calls and specific people that did this or did that. And I think it made it a little difficult for other family members sometimes to feel included in the magnitude of this story. And so when this film was presented to us initially, one thing that really stuck out that was very important and made it very inviting was that every single family member was asked to participate and were given a voice. And the end result was, I think, what the story is truly about in its beauty and its profound nature, that it is about 40 people that came together, each contributing in one way or another, that made the story what it is. And it was the first time I really felt that it was presented that way in that big picture concept. And that's where the metaphorical lessons, I think, of what Flight 93 is all about, that the beauty of America is that people from all different directions, all different aspects of life can come together unified for a specific purpose and do something tremendous and heroic.
Very well said. Very well said. And Lori, I was watching some clips of the movie, and your brother, how did you feel about the person who portrayed your brother? Because when I saw the clip, I was thinking, oh my goodness, his likeness was so amazing. It took me back a little bit.
Daniel was amazing. And one of the things that happened in making the film was speaking to him. And I was able to share so many nuances about Richard to him, which he absolutely absorbed in every possible way. And believe it or not, he flew out in a 24-hour loop to meet me here in Florida at my home, meet my parents for a few hours, and then flew back to New York. That's how committed he was as an actor to get this right, because not only did he want to honor Richard and reveal what he thought was happening at that time, but he also wanted to make that connection with my family and for myself, for Ross, for my parents. That was one of the most heartwarming things that could have ever happened.
When I saw the picture of him on that movie screen, I was like, oh my goodness, it looks just like the pictures I've seen of him.
It was remarkable. I mean, even his body type was exactly Richard. There's a clip that Kate Solomon did that is attached to the movie, if you get it on DVD, in which she did a whole documentary on the families and the making of. And she actually has a moment when Daniel came into our backyard, and my parents and I saw him come into our backyard. And I think you hear me saying, Mom, Mom, it's Richard. He looks exactly like Richard. And they embrace, and it is a moment that I will never forget. I mean, that's when the beauty of art and life and reality cross over and have that magic moment. And that was a part of it.
That's awesome. Very awesome. That's amazing. So thank you so much, Lori, for being with us today. Is there anything else that you would like our audience to know about the making of this movie and your involvement?
Well, I just want to thank Paul and Kate and Brad, particularly because of everything that they accomplished. I think that the film will carry historically for the test of time because that's how accurate it truly is. The story holds up. I feel like my job is kind of done. I don't have to tell the story all the time because it's there on film, beautifully, beautifully done, and so accurate as we possibly could know. And I just also want to say that so much heart went into this between them, the families, and also the opportunity that I had to meet other family members under very, very different conditions, but the bonds that we made from that time just will carry me forever. I didn't have the opportunity a lot of times to come to the memorial since I lived in Florida, but this gave me a chance to create some relationships that I'll treasure forever. So I'm so grateful for that. I'm so grateful for Paul and his vision. And it's just a really, really important film that kind of changed my trajectory.
Well, thank you so much, Lori. And I look forward to seeing you in a few days. So please be safe on your travels to Pennsylvania, and we'll see you Friday.
Thank you so much, Donna. We really appreciate this.
Oh, very true. I actually met Corey. They had brought him out I met him at the memorial and gave him a little tour of the temporary memorial. And as soon as I got out and was walking up, I immediately, I knew about him because I did my own research on who the actor was that was playing my brother. So, just did a little Google search on it. So as soon as I got out of the car, because I actually was giving another tour at the same time almost with Chris Sullivan from, Outback Steakhouse, trying to get him to come on board to be part of our process of raising money for the memorial. So I was walking across the parking lot and I could see him in the distance, and I said, I know who that is, I think Corey is more of a blend between Joey and I combined, kind of, you know what I mean? I could see both of us in Corey in a way. But yeah, I recognized him from across the parking lot, that I knew who it was. And that's the part what I mean, where Paul had enough caring, and the team and the universe enough caring so we could meet the person that is playing our brother, get a feel for them, and that they felt comfortable enough to us that they could feel free to call us and ask us questions about our loved one. That's amazing to me. You know what I mean? And it just shows you the commitment that they all listened to what the families wanted.
And by the way, 20 years later, that studio, I can't tell you how committed they were to the re-release and, caring. I think for them, it's one of the most important films they've ever made, and they're intensely proud of it. And I'm intensely proud of Universal, because I think they're the best of what my industry that I've given my life to can be. They are just, I can't speak highly enough of them. And also AMC Theatres. I got an email from Adam Aaron, who's the CEO of AMC Theatres, and he sent me, I'll send it to you. It was a little email with a tweet that he sent out about the re-release. He said I think he said it was just an off the charts response from people reading about it. So, it's still speaking to people. And I just want to say one other thing, if I may, about a person you perhaps didn't meet so much of, Michael Bronner, who was sort of Kate's opposite number in doing a lot of the research on the military side. And he did an amazing job, because thanks to him, we were able to show in that film what at the time I think people were a bit unsure about, which I think is absolutely fundamental and which has subsequently proven to be exactly true, which is that the idea that this plane could in any way be stopped from reaching its target other than by the action of the passengers was something that was not understood as widely then as it is now. In other words, I think there was a sort of feeling that somehow the authorities were in command of that situation. And we showed, I think, what was true, which was that, and it's nobody's fault, communications broke down in the stress and chaos of that hour of activity. It was only the passengers who stood between that plane reaching Washington or not. And that is I think that was not as widely known, I think, at that time. Would you agree with that? I'm interested to know if you agree with that.
Great.
Yeah, I would. I think so.
I think it's also interesting to note that some of those military people that were involved in the activities portrayed themselves in the movie.
That's why they did it, because they wanted to reflect the scale of the heroism, that they were literally all that stood between us, And that, I think, speaks very loudly. I suspect that will be one of the things that young people will really understand, and that's good.
So Claudette, I know that Jody is a member of our Friends Board of Directors, and we're so delighted to have her as part of our team. And she's told me how important the making of this movie was to you and the process of moving forward. So do you want to share with our audience how this movie was for you?
Well, I was a little bit concerned, like Ken, at the onset. Is it a little early for this? Is Hollywood going to exploit this as an amazing thing and make a lot of money off of it? I was very skeptical. And like Paul said, it was still early. And then I met Paul Greengrass and Kate Solomon. And Gordie said it beautifully. Exploring what may have happened on that flight, nobody knows, without exploiting the event. And there was a generosity in making the film of really allowing actors to feel what our loved ones likely felt, and to express that in their own words, other than repeating, the phone calls that had been made and all that. And I've seen that generosity. That's all I can, and lack of self-consciousness about, Flight 93, all about us in the making of the film, because there was the military, there was air traffic control. There were so many other things going on all around this. And I was very heartened at the opening of the memorial to see that spirit continued in the way the museum, the memorial itself was laid out. It was not all about Flight 93. It was about a day in the history of the United States. So anyway, Paul and Kate were just magnificent. I can't say enough about them.
Thank you, Claudette. Thank you so much. I can't tell you what those words mean from all of you. It's just remarkable. And
one of my regrets was not being able to participate more in anything, because I was left with two young children who certainly occupied my days plus. And it was hard to get around and move around. And be involved without losing focus on their well-being, their mental health, and their helping them move forward as much as they helped me move forward. So I'm very grateful to the film and to David Raish, who played my husband on the flight. Now, my husband never made a phone call. And that day, when I heard that people had made phone calls from the plane, I knew it's not something he would have ever done, because he would not have wanted to involve me in his terror. He would have thought, either I'll be home to tell her all about this, or she'll find out soon enough that I'm not coming home. So we don't know about his involvement at all. And Paul didn't know. Nobody knew. But David was so gracious. I have to tell you, there was a luncheon at the Tribeca Film Festival where some of the actors had joined, and I had gone down to be at that luncheon, and Paul was there. David Raish was not. Paul made a phone call. David didn't realize we would be there. He was in Brooklyn. He raced over to Tribeca to meet us, and we must have spent 2 hours with him, and he was just phenomenal. What a beautiful human being.
Definitely.
Yeah. And again, Paul, that was so sweet of you to do. Meant the world to us.
And these links and connections and conversations sort of part of the process, aren't they, of moving forward and examining and thinking and reflecting, the echoes, I suppose.
Well, what's really important, Paul, about what you did is that it is making this story as current today as it was then. It's so important to remember. And I'll give you, I'll tell you a little nugget of one experience we had that was so disheartening. When my son was in high school, it was 9/11 happened sort of midweek, and the kids were busy, and we did not go to Shanksville that year. And that morning, the headmaster of the school made an announcement asking for a moment of silence for the victims of the World Trade Center and the Pentagon. Yeah, exactly. I called him.
Job. Yeah.
Thank you.
Shirley came home from school just devastated. Like, what is this about? And we can't forget. We have to keep remembering. And the Legacy Award that the Friends have started and all of that, films like Flight 93, the Memorial, the National Park Service's generosity always. These things are so important.
Yeah. You can never talk much.
I think it's also important to recognize that Paul, your team, and certainly from our family's perspective, you portrayed our loved ones not as victims, and we don't refer to our loved ones as victims. They're heroes. They had courage. They had the information. Under the most excruciating conditions that none of us can really ever truly imagine, they found it in them to act. Their heroism was revealed. And that is clearly a message that you wove into the film.
Yeah. And it just is a shining example, isn't it? None of us know when we'll be called upon. They were called upon, and they acted, and the example, I think in many ways I honestly do think this. I feel the debt owed to the heroes of United 93, Flight 93. I think that sense is escalating. That you'd have a better sense of it than me, but it feels like that from the outside. Would you agree with that? That as time passes, it stands more boldly the extraordinary courage and sacrifice. That's as it seems to me anyway. What do you think?
I think, you guys took the words right out of my mouth about how you portrayed them, but also I think on the flip side you got to think about is where would we be today if Flight 93 had reached its intended target? I mean, I think especially in today's society and the current events over the last year and a half, I mean, if we could just come together and share that love that 40s had for each other, I think would go miles. And I often wonder, I mean, I hate the term, and Gordie knows it better than anybody, when someone calls them a victim, it really gets my blood pressure up because they were able to gain information and act on that information and gave their lives so they could save countless number of lives in the hope that they could just go home and have dinner with their family. I think Claudette said it very well. My brother would probably be thinking the same along. I just want to go home to have dinner with my wife and kids. That's all the motivation they needed. And I think all four of them have enough love and respect for each other that they could unite and overcome a greater evil. And I think...
And from many different backgrounds and many different political opinions. I mean, you couldn't ask for a greater cross-section. And I agree with you. I mean, your country's obviously divided. My country's very divided. It's a symbol of unity, of what happens when people work together. What extraordinary things people do in those circumstances, and it does make you reflect on division, doesn't it? And I'm not making a partisan point. It's as true of one side as the other,
Neither was I. I was just saying, if you could, like Claudette said, we really truly don't know what happened on that flight. There's only 40 people who could tell us that. They're not here to tell us. But I think the film does a good enough job without taking dramatic liberty. Is that the right word? With the facts. But I think what it shows is that they had to have love and respect for each other for it to work. I don't think they could have accomplished what they did without having that common goal, that common soul, that love and respect. And I think you portrayed that. And I really sometimes I wonder what our country would look like if it did reach its intended target. We're lucky. We're blessed that it didn't work.
We surely are.
And I think a true way to honor their lives is kind of try to live our lives like it's September 10th, 01 instead of September 11th, or how we came together on September 12th. I mean, that I think that's the side or the product of the product that you put on film and the story that you told.
Well, amen to that. I agree.
Hey, Danny, do we have any questions from our audience? I'm going to ask Danny, who's been a godsend for me over the last week, helping me with getting all of you together today. So there she is. Hey, Danny.
Hello.
Hi.
So we do have a few questions. The first one is that one of the viewers wants to know how much input or cooperation did United Airlines possibly give in making your film?
Well, I can't honestly remember all the details, but I think, and I wouldn't want to say, they helped us enormously because they may have wanted to. I think they were. I certainly don't recall any difficulty, put it that way. You know what I mean? I think that, and I hope, though I don't know, but I hope that they see the film similarly as a reflection of the courage of the aircrew on that aeroplane, and the professionalism, which was obviously there too, So, I hope that they feel part of the dignity of the portrayal as anybody else. That would be my hope, and I believe so, but I don't know.
Can you describe the casting process of trying to find the right people to play the 40 heroes?
Well, I wanted to cast people. I didn't want to make it a film about movie stars and all of that. I just wanted people who were theatre actors in the mainly, but not exclusively, but mainly from New York. So that sort of rich, beautiful acting talent that's on every street corner in New York, in every show that you ever go to. And the casting process, I remember the whole process of making the film, to be honest, as a privilege. It was a privilege to be an observer and a bystander and a participant. And the casting process was the same. Everybody came in wanting to do their best work. We decided to shoot it actually in the UK because I thought it would, and we all felt the same way, that perhaps if we could sort of be all together and live together and explore that event together, it might make it easier for us all as a group to kind of meditate on it, if I can put it that way. And that was the case, I think. And it made it very, very intense for those actors. Very, very intense. And they were so, well, you explained, the lengths they went to, the detail that they tried to gather, the commitment that they brought to the process, and just the intensity of the work. There are the power of the collective. It's the same, really. Films are tiny, insubstantial versions of real life. Do you know what I mean? That's what they are, and the teamwork there, and the way that group of actors worked with each other, and some days people would get downhearted or feel that they hadn't done their best work, and the way the collective arms would go round people, or they'd call one of you and seek some comfort or some advice, and then they'd come back again, and it was just the most blessed experience of my life, to be absolutely honest.
So one of the other questions is, how did you decide the wardrobe of the characters? Is that something that the family members had input into?
They did. I think so. I think Kate was, as you know, an absolute force of nature. I think she went and discussed all those choices. I think you would know better than I, but I'm pretty sure she meticulously researched that, as absolutely best she could. Would that be right?
Absolutely. She came and talked to us, and I remember seeing, my brother portrayed wearing similar clothes to what he would typically wear. Ed was a computer engineer, they made sure he had a laptop, when he was being portrayed, and they went out of their way to insert a lot of that kind of visual imagery that perhaps the general public wouldn't have understood, but to each family member, it really hit home. It just, for us, made it all the more meaningful and touching.
And I think,
Karen.
I think every conversation that you had with Kate, now I'm going to probably say it was probably for everyone, it was long. I mean, and she, if you sat down and met with her in person, you put the digital recorder down and you'd be talking for an hour and a half, and she would ask you, and it was like almost like a job interview at sometimes, where she's asking you questions about this and that, and whatever she learned, she would, what do you think about this? I mean, the effort and the thought process of what you guys did, I'm still amazed at the quality and the intensity and the search for accuracy as best as you could. Was going in the amount of questions that she would ask.
Yeah. And, she stayed in touch and she still loves you all. And, when I was on the phone, she's, don't forget this, don't forget that. So it's amazing. Good for her. She, as everybody did, she gave her heart and soul, and bravo to her.
Yes.
That is the extent of the questions I have for the moment.
Any parting words from any of our guests today?
Is I would say, go watch the movie or rent it or watch it on whatever streaming platform you can. And why I say that is probably 77 million people have been born since over the last 20 years that really didn't have an opportunity to be, to hear about it. Now they're growing up about it, and it's kind of eventually will be history book stuff, but it also gives you an idea, that generation that was not born, kind of to tell the story about the events of 9/11, because I really believe you can't tell the story of Flight 93 without telling the story of what happened in New York and what happened at the Pentagon. All of them are all interwoven together. And I think that's kind of what the memorial does too. It allows you to hear about the events in New York and at the Pentagon leading up to the events on Flight 93. So I think I'd like to go see people just to educate themselves by watching the movie.
And I'd, again, like to thank Paul and the team at Universal Studios. The success of this movie was really born out of relationships, the relationship that they forged with the families. That enabled us to get close, to speak from our hearts, to work with them to create what I feel is a singular event in this movie that it comes as close to being able to tell the story of Flight 93 as anyone could be if you weren't on the plane. And as Kenny said earlier, only 40 people know what happened truly that day. But this film, it gives us hope. This film teaches us some valuable lessons. And again, as Kenny said, I urge people to see United 93 so that they can grasp a piece of our history.
How are you unmuted?
Claudette, you were talking.
There you go.
Yeah. I can't hear you, Claudette.
Claudette, is your computer muted, like up in the right-hand corner? Little green button with the microphone.
Wonders of technology.
Okay. Yeah, I had to unmute mine on my.
How's that? Can you hear me?
There you go.
Yeah, we can.
I can hear you now.
Sorry, I tend to panic and my kids laugh at me a lot about it.
No worries. No worries.
Anyway, I was just saying thank you, Paul, for the gift you've given us and the country and the world with this film. You and Kate and Universal are all just incredibly generous, kind, lovely people, and thank you.
Oh, well, I mean, let me just say on behalf of Universal and all of us who made the film and the cast, wonderful cast, and Kate and everybody, I thank you from the bottom of my heart, our hearts, for the privilege of taking this journey with you. It's been the journey of my working life, and we walk with you ever onwards in memory of the heroes of United 93.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you all for joining us today. This was a most interesting conversation, and I appreciate you all taking time from your busy day to be with us. So if you want to learn more about the Friends of Flight 93, you can go to flight93friends.org. On the page, you can also make a donation to the Friends to help us continue with our mission of educating America about the 40 heroes of Flight 93. So thank you for joining us today. It's been a pleasure to have you. Thanks, everyone. Have a great evening.